Percy exited his quarters, but then his attention was caught by some arguing he heard from underneath him. He crouched down and peeked through the ventilation grates. Clarice was talking to an image that was projected in the steam from the pipes. It was her father, Percy's least favorite Olympian, Ares the war god. "You're pathetic, little girl," he said. "I should have let one of my sons go on this quest." "I will succeed," said Clarice, "and I'll make you proud." "You'd better," said Ares, "'cause if you let that slime ball Jackson get in the way..." "But the oracle said..." "I don't care about whatever words come out of a dead woman," said Ares. "You will succeed, 'cause if you don't..." She flinched when she saw his fist. Percy never thought someone as tough as Clarice would flinch. "Do we have an understanding?" Ares growled. More alarm bells rang, and Percy ran up to the spar deck to meet up with Tyson and Annabeth. He didn't say a word about what he saw. As much as it bothered him, he didn't really know what to think. Seconds later, Clarice came out and took a pair of binoculars from one of the corpses. Percy tried not to look at her. "At last," she said. "Captain, full steam ahead." There wasn't much in the direction she was looking, except a giant spiral-shaped storm cloud hovering over the water. Percy could see something fuzzy in the distance, but it was too far to make out what it was. One thing was for sure, however close they were, they definitely traveled much closer and less safer into the Bermuda Triangle than any mortal ship could travel. The ship kept moving closer, and now Percy could see what the fuzzy object was. It was a giant boulder sticking out of the surface. No, a cliff about 100 feet tall. Percy swore there was something at the top, but it was too high and not clear enough to see. Beyond that, right below the massive storm, was something that looked a lot like a giant whirlpool. "It's Charybdis and Scylla," said Clarice. "We have to sail right through." "Are you crazy?" asked Annabeth. "If I want to get into the sea of monsters, sailing between them is the only way in," Clarice said. "Can't you just go around?" Percy asked. "No," she said. "You don't know anything, do you? If I tried, they would just appear in my path again. And don't worry, if Charybdis tries to swallow us, we'll fire our cannons and blow her straight to Tartarus." "Oh my God, so you are crazy," said Annabeth. "Just watch and learn, wise girl," said Clarice. "Captain, set a course through Charybdis." "Aye, aye, my lady," said the captain. The sound of Charybdis kept getting louder as they got closer. Her roar was like the sound of the world's largest toilet flushing. Every time she inhaled, the ship pulled forward, and every time she exhaled, it pushed back. As much as Scylla's cliff sounded dangerous, Percy thought sailing close to it might be the best way to avoid getting swallowed by Charybdis. "Percy, what if you could just take control of the water here?" Annabeth asked. "You are Poseidon's son, after all." Percy closed his eyes and tried to concentrate, but he couldn't seem to get the water to calm down. The monster was just too loud and powerful. "I can't," he said. "The waves won't respond." Before they could notice, the giant toilet monster flushed with a mighty roar, forcing everyone to the floor. "Full reverse!" Clarice screamed. The ship started to spin around the whirlpool, and hard waves hit the sides. "Prepare the cannons!" Clarice shouted. Another corpse forced his way next to Clarice, who for some reason was on fire. "Boiler room overheated, ma'am," he said. "Prepare yourselves for death." "No," Tyson shouted. "I can fix it." "What? You?" Clarice said incredulously. "Cyclopes are immune to fire, and he's good with mechanics," said Annabeth. "Then go already," Clarice said impatiently. "No, Tyson," said Percy. "It's too dangerous." Tyson smiled. "Only way, brother. Be right back." As Percy watched him follow the corpse down the hatch, he thought about Tyson's expression. He'd never seen Tyson look so confident before. The ship kept lurching, and they were much closer to the edge of the funnel. And just below the waterline was the mouth of Charybdis, with her filthy lips and her gigantic boat-sized teeth. It was like a worm's mouth, only a lot bigger. "Port side cannons are in range, my lady," the captain shouted. "Fire away," shouted Clarice. 4 cannons were shot towards the center of the monster. 3 cannonballs went past the teeth while the other dropped into its mouth. Percy knew the firing was hopeless. It would take more power than they even had on the whole ship. Then they felt the ship's vibration change. The humming of the engine felt stronger and steadier, and the ship started pulling away from the monster's mouth. "Tyson! He did it!" Annabeth shouted in excitement. "We're still not there yet," said Clarice. "We still have to stay close if we want to actually get into the Sea of Monsters." "We may not have another chance," Percy said. "If we risk that again, we could die." Then something unexpected happened. The mouth exploded open and out popped the cannonball it had swallowed. It crashed into the side of the ship with a big bam. "Abandoned ship!" the captain shouted. "No!" Clarice yelled. "We have no choice, my lady. The ship is breaking up." He never got to finish, because right where the captain was standing, something big and green had appeared as fast as lightning for 1 second and disappeared just as fast. And where the captain had stood, all that was left was his legs. The kids didn't even notice how much closer they were to the cliffside now. And at the very top, hanging over the edge, was Charybdis' sister, Scylla. It was a dragon-like creature with multiple heads like the Hydra, only with heads that were 3 times bigger and necks 10 times longer. The demigods watched as more heads kept snatching up more corpses. "Lifeboat!" Annabeth yelled. "We can't escape fast enough in that thing," Clarice shouted. "We have to try," said Annabeth. "Here," said Percy, "take the thermos. I'll get Tyson." "No, Percy," said Annabeth. "The heat in there will kill you." He ignored her, and just as he was about to jump down the hatch, Scylla got him. But he managed to jab her in the eye with his sword. But then the monster dropped him and he fell. He descended about 100 feet down through the air and the ship exploded. "Tyson!" he yelled. He kept falling faster and faster, and then... splash! He was knocked out. Percy woke up with Annabeth sitting in front of him. They were on a rowboat with a makeshift sail made of metal fabric. They made it through the entrance to the Sea of Monsters. "Easy, you need to rest," she said. "Tyson," Percy muttered. Annabeth shook her head. "Percy, I'm really sorry," she said. "But there might be a chance he could still be out there somewhere. After all, fire can't kill him." But even that didn't make Percy feel any more hopeful. If the explosion could rip the metal fabric of the whole ship, how could Tyson even survive that? There was no way. He had given his life for the rest of them, and all Percy could think about was the times when he felt embarrassed just being related to him. Percy looked in his bag, which was now missing some stuff, probably from getting snatched by Scylla. Hermes' multivitamins was still safe, but other than that, everything else was now lost. His pen had magically reappeared back into his pocket like it always did, no matter where he lost it. Hermes' thermos was somehow now empty. Then he sighed and looked at Annabeth. "Maybe you were right," he said to her. "Maybe you can't trust a Cyclops." "Okay, look, I'm sorry, Percy," she said. "I was wrong about him. I just wish I could tell him that." He felt like staying mad at her, but he knew that wouldn't help. They'd been through a lot together in just 2 summers. They both saved each other's lives plenty of times, and they've become perfectly good friends. It felt so stupid just acting like his relationship with his brother would interfere with that. He thought about Luke's reaction when he told him about his dad. Then he thought about his prophecy. Then he figured he should just go ahead and ask. "Annabeth, what is my prophecy?" he asked. "Look, I know Chiron promised the gods he wouldn't say anything, but you didn't really promise." Annabeth pursed her lips. "Percy, it's better for heroes not to know their own future, because when they do, they just try to change it, and it never works." "But Luke said something big happens on my 16th birthday," Percy said. "What does that mean?" "Well, I don't know the full prophecy," she said, "but it warns about a child of the big three. It says once he or she reaches 16, they'll decide the fate of the gods, so they'll either be saved or be destroyed. That's also why your dad and your uncles made that oath to stop having children before, to prevent that prophecy from coming true." "But if that's true, then I would have to survive at least 3 more years," Percy said. "When Chiron learned about Thalia," said Annabeth, "he used to think the prophecy was talking about her, at least until, and then you came along." "Wait," said Percy, "you don't think that half-blood could possibly mean, like, maybe a Cyclops, could it? I mean, aren't the big three always having monster children?" "No," said Annabeth, "it always refers to half human, half god. There's really nobody alive it could be except you." "Then why don't the gods just kill me if they're desperate to keep that from happening?" "I don't know. That's a good question," said Annabeth. "Maybe they're still trying to make their decisions altogether. Maybe they're still giving time to see what kind of hero you'll turn out to be. After all, you'd be pretty useful for their survival. But even if they could, some of them possibly might be afraid to offend your dad from killing you. But I think the real question is, what will you yourself decide when that time comes?" "Was there any hints left out from the prophecy?" Percy asked. Before she could answer, both their attentions were caught by the sound of eagles flying over them and towards an island. It wasn't too big or too small of an island, but it was big enough to have a nice collection of buildings and a small mountain in the center. The current pushed them toward the tropical paradise, up to a dock where a lady in a suit was waiting. "Welcome," she said as they stepped onto the dock. Her dazzling smile made them feel like they just got off the Princess Andromeda. Then again, their boat may not have been the weirdest one in the harbor. There was a submarine and an old-fashioned sailing ship, probably replicas for tourists or something. "Is this your first time with us?" the lady asked. Percy and Annabeth exchanged looks. "I see," the lady said. "Well, I'm sure Cece will want to speak with you personally before the luau. Right this way, please." The funny thing about going on quests, Percy and Annabeth were used to running into traps. Ones in which case that at first looked like a good vacation spot and had normal-looking people. So they were expecting the lady to turn out to be a monster that would take off its disguise any minute and kill them. But they were exhausted, and their stomachs were growling when she mentioned a luau. "I guess it couldn't hurt," Annabeth muttered. Of course, Percy knew it was possible. But they followed the lady anyway. Percy kept his hands in his pockets, trying to hold onto Hermes' multivitamins and Riptide, but the further they walked, and the more they saw, the more he forgot about them. The place was amazing with its white marble architecture. There was also some fountains that sprayed water into the air, forming impossible shapes like flying eagles and galloping horses. Percy remembered that Tyson loved horses. He knew he'd love to see these fountains. Percy turned around to see his expression, but then he remembered Tyson was gone. "Percy, you okay?" Annabeth asked. "You look pale." Yeah, I'm okay," he lied. "Let's keep going."